What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another Real Deal episode. As you guys know, in this episode, what we do is we dive into one deal that is very, very real and authentic. And the purpose of it is so we can just get the nitty gritty of how they took down this deal, how they found it, how they funded it, and how they forced the deal. In other words, how they got creative. And the purpose of learning this is so we can go and replicate it and do the same thing and build wealth and freedom for our families and for our future. And today we have a special guest. He's actually been on our long form podcast. He is very big in the self-storage space. He is constructed over 3 million square feet of self-storage that he's overseen and is just crushing it in the space. But it's interesting as we were talking, and we'll dive into it a little bit, but one of the things that he loves being known for is the guy who can pick up his kids from school. And so I love that. Like, out of all of his accomplishments, he's like, this is what I love being known for. So with that being said, welcome, Charlie. How are you, dude?
All right, man. So I see that you're living the life on Instagram in Hawaii all the time. So I'm surprised you have time to even do this from all your surfing and golfing.
Dude, you know what they say about social media? You can only believe so much of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just
So
the
really,
highlight
you're
reel.
telling me that you golf and surf even more than what's on social media then? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I got to tone it back a little bit. I can't make you too jealous over there. So
Yo.
I'm just kidding, man. Well, dude, I'm excited to do this. Tell us about the deal. Just give us a brief overview of it. Maybe tell us what it is first, and then we'll dive into, how you found it and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I had a self-storage deal that I bought a few years ago. I was actually consulting on another deal for another asset class altogether. And then what happened was one of the sellers actually came to me and said, hey, I heard you do a lot with self-storage. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I have a self-storage facility that I am considering selling or looking for somebody to partner with. I wanted, your feedback on it.
Cool.
And so this person, kind of give you background on it, they have a 9-figure net worth. And this deal that they were looking at, it's like, it was such a small deal for them. They were trying to sell it for like $300,000, I think it was.
Okay.
It just simply didn't make sense for them. I mean, even if they made 40% cash on cash return, it just didn't fit in with the rest of their huge portfolio.
Yeah. Why did they come to you?
Well, they had some working background with me through other people that I had done a really good job with, partners of theirs as well. They had heard just a lot of good stuff about what I've done for the other clients, both on the brokerage side, building construction management, and then also just on asset management too as well. And so when they saw that I did all three of those, and also I did it in self-storage, that, and also they probably thought I was kind of like a beginner new investor. And so this deal was actually kind of fine-tuned for that. It actually was probably maybe even a little bit too small for me at the time. But when I looked closer at it, I saw a lot of potential in it. And so the fact that they thought, hey, you're newer, this is tailored to you, this might be a deal that you can make a lot of money on, but for me, it just doesn't make sense. I think that's why they kind of pictured me for it. And also, the other thing too as well was that it was listed with another realtor. And that realtor just did a terrible job listing it. Like, if they would have done a better job listing it, then it simply would have sold.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So you took advantage of that opportunity big time. I love this deal because it is self-storage. I know there's a lot of people, we don't talk about it a ton on here, but I think almost everybody hears, oh, self-storage, it's good to get into. It's very recession resistant, all these different things, right? And so I'm happy that we're talking about it because it's different than, your typical duplex or single family home. With this one specifically, and I also like that it's, $300,000. It's very manageable for a lot of people. Tell us about it. So when they came to you and they said, hey, this is for sale for 300 grand, what were kind of like the first things that went through your mind, or what's the first thing you did to figure out if this is going to be a good deal or something you should pull the trigger on or not?
One of the things that has always worked out well for me throughout my career is that I had a W-2 job that was paying me 6 figures for a long time. So I like to use this analogy as a hunter, but I never had to eat and kill. Like whatever I killed, I could just store away for the winter. And why that was so important with this deal is that I've always looked at like, hey, how can I make this deal work for this guy? This guy's worth 9 figures. Initially, it came to me to partner on the deal, but if I could find a way to make it completely passive for him and make money, which I actually was trying to propose to him, he could have made a lot of money too as well. What actually happened as a result was I gave him a lot of good information, and he just like, I'm too busy for this. Just buy it from me. And so I was like, okay, and then so I talked with actually our mutual partner and friend, because he's actually somebody I've partnered on a few times now. And I asked him, I'm like, I think I can make like $600,000, $700,000 pretty quick on this. Is he going to get pissed if I like make all this money on it and he sold it for me And he's like, no, he's all about like, if you make money on it and he thought it was a fair price for him, he'll move on. And the other thing that benefited too as well is that I had represented them on my brokerage side before, but because this property had already been listed to a realtor that just did such a bad job for it, it kind of absolved me of that fiduciary capacity too. Because honestly, if I would have listed it and sold it, I probably could have sold it for at least $150,000 more. They just did such a bad job.
Yeah.
So the value was that I came to him, I tried to make him money, and he just said, hey, I'm too busy. But you buy it, you make the money from it, and then what happened was I told it into a gold mine. We'll clear 7 figures on it pretty easy. And now he's actually trying to do more business with me on the self-storage, wanting to get back into it, but on a much, much bigger deal.
Yeah, I love that. How it's kind of come full circle. Kind of backing up a little bit, how did you fund this thing? Did you partner on it with somebody else? You said it was 300 grand is what you ended up buying it for, and it was probably worth maybe 450 at the time if they would have asked what they could have got out of it.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I got it that cheap is that, one of the things I always factor about, and you've mentioned this too as well, is what is my discount for cash? And they wanted to close this really fast. And so roughly, if I don't remember what the dollar amount is, but I think I got roughly a 30,000 discount to basically buy it cash. Which, I mean, if I needed to go to a hard money lender then and pay like basically 10 points, or 10, whatever, 15, 20% interest, it made sense. So I funded it cash. It was true cash because I had it sitting in my bank account. So that really wasn't much of an issue. The other thing about it too as well was that it was just so poorly mismanaged. It was at 30% occupancy. And when I ran the numbers, I'm like, within 2 months, I can get this 95% occupied and it'll be worth, worst case scenario, like somewhere between $650,000 and $850,000 just by basically actually like paying attention to the deal. Not even like really hard, just like actually giving it some attention. And that's actually exactly what happened. But then the deal, what really made the deal work out was there was actually a lot of room to expand the facility. So we tripled the size of the facility. So today, if I were to exit from it, I'd clear well over 7 figures on it.
Man, that's awesome. Way cool. So you obviously you looked at it a couple of different ways. Hey, this is a value add. One, I can get this thing stabilized. Why wasn't it up to, 80, 90% occupancy? Was it just because they were managing it poorly? Or
yeah, so that's a really good question because it helps give you perspective. But like, these guys, if I had to value how much time their time is worth, it's well over $10,000 an hour. So this storage facility, if I buy it for $275,000, owned it free and clear, we were thinking it was going to make like, $40,000 to $60,000 at NOI. Which, that sounds like a lot to maybe somebody that's, doing their very first deal. But for somebody who consistently does that on a single deal all the time, also because they didn't have the system in place, that's not a lot of money. So they were actually doing the leaf blowing themselves or like one of the partners. And it got to the point where I'm like, whoa, look at that, 9-figure guy over there basically blowing the leaves on the driveway. It's just like so hilarious when you think about it like that. It's just a poor use of their time. That's really kind of why like it just made sense for them. So for them to lose money on that deal, to just not have to deal with the loss on time, it was 100% win for them. And I realized that very quickly. So that's why I was able to really make it a win for both parties involved. And that's also why, like, I also didn't feel bad about just buying it out from outright because, I asked the partners how they felt about it. And then secondly, I also offered them a scenario where they could make money and stay in, but they just didn't want to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great, man. And I like too how it's like you mentioned that you had the cash and you paid cash for it. And I think a lot of people hear that and they immediately write it off as saying, oh, yeah, like I don't have that much money in my bank account. Obviously, Charlie was able to get that because he's got a lot of money, and that's how you get good deals if you get money. And so I'm glad that you brought up, like, hey, if I would have went and got hard money on this, I could have closed on it in the same exact amount of time. Yes, I would have paid a few points, but it's still worth it, and you still could have made the deal work. And so I just always love pointing things out like that to where people understand like there's no excuse to not get it done. And then I also like how you're like, hey, I just created a win-win scenario, for those guys. And this is all real estate investing is. This is all creating a good deal is win-win. Is this a win for the other team? Like, yeah, it's a win for them. He's stoked because he's wasting his time blowing the leaves. Like he's stoked because it's just not worth his time dealing with all the ins and outs of it. Like the juice isn't worth the squeeze for him in his situation, but for somebody else, right? For you on the other end, it's also a win because the juice is worth the squeeze. And so I think it's just like recognizing those situations. And there's probably a lot of good strategy you can pull from this and saying like, hey, can I go target people like that are worth 9 figures that have these other properties in their portfolio that just aren't worth their time, but they're going to be worth my time. And maybe you go after people like that. Just a random thought, random idea. But I just love the concept of like, hey, I'm creating a win-win scenario here. And then we dive into how you actually force the deal, because a lot of people would have seen that deal. Oh, it's only 30% occupancy. No, thank you. Like, it's not worth it to me. There's so much work in getting it up there, getting it involved, or they might not even have realized or recognized there's more square footage to be able to go and build on and to add to that complex. So I love getting into that and like, hey, you didn't just buy this deal at a discounted rate, but you then took it a step further, right? Which is to go and maximize one by getting, occupancy up, and then two by adding to the square footage.
Yeah, and to add to that too as well, the reason why I partially paid cash too as well is because I knew that if the property leased up very quickly, there was a very strong chance that I was going to build construction, and then so I didn't want to have a loan and then turn around and 6 months later initiate another loan, go through all the hassle. Yeah. And so that 275 that I put into it, that served as my equity injection on the construction loan anyways, because if you've ever done a construction loan, let's say that you want to do $1 million of construction and they give you 75 LTV. Well, I use that property free and clear as my equity injection so I can immediately start doing draws. Where if I were to have a debt on it, they would say, okay, well, now you got to put in this additional amount of capital in to do that. So that was part of the reason why I just paid cash, because normally I don't like to just have my money tied up, but I had significant reserves at the time, and it just made sense because I knew that I could be transitioning into construction financing in a few months.
Dude, I'm glad you brought that up. Because I'm very much like, let's get the best use of our cash. This is the highest cash on cash return. And so someone here is like, oh, you paid cash for something that's not very smart, right? But I think you just explained that. And so for those of you listening that don't know what LTV is, it's loan to value, and it's a ratio, right? What they're going to require a lot of times to go loan money from the bank. But I did the exact same thing, man. And the cool thing with that too is as long as you've owned it for at least a year since that transaction's happened, they're not going to a lot of times take what you bought the property for, but they'll reappraise it. And so if you got it at a discount, and especially like in your situation with that one where, it's obvious it's worth a lot more money, especially if, you've gotten the occupancy up. Now they're not just taking your insert of cash, but they're actually taking what the new value is, and they can count that as your 25% down, which gets really fun and really exciting, because then, you're just able to go and create more money, and you have to put even less cash into these new construction projects, which is awesome. Sweet, dude. I love that. Love this deal. Super glad that you broke it down for everybody. For you, like, what's probably the biggest thing that you would say you learned from this deal specifically that you kind of took moving forward / that other people could also take from this deal and learn from it and apply it into their own investing?
I think one of the trademarks in my career is that people do not question my work ethic, and they like that I'm a heavy owner operator, even though I'm not nearly as heavy owner operator as I used to. I mean, I got a staff that basically manages a lot of deals for me. But I think the biggest thing somebody can take away is that hard work is undefeated. Like if everybody in this deal recognized this guy will hustle, this guy will basically get it done. And now we went from like, hey, I was kind of working as this guy. He kind of looked at me like as maybe as like, you know, stepson that, like he does some business with or whatever, to now like we're legitimately talking about doing like, 8-figure deals together, So, from basically providing value to them and offering them a situation that was really, I think, even a better win-win situation, which is partnering with them and not just taking the deal outright for them. That really kind of set the standard for that. If you're always trying to help other people, not look at only your personal gain, it will come back tenfold on you. And so that was the biggest takeaway from this deal, is that I did everything I possibly could to add value for the seller. Keep in mind, the seller that was represented by another agent on this particular deal. And in the end, now, I mean, I could easily see us doing like 9 figures of deals like over the next decade.
Wow. Dude, if we missed the whole beginning and just this podcast was just the last 3 minutes, it would 100% be worth it. That right there, and pulling that out of the deal and what you learned, just that piece of advice, I think it goes so far, right? It's the same thing as flipping a house and making money right now versus holding onto a property that cash flows for the rest of your life type thing, right? It's like those relationships, they keep on giving. And I think that so many times we undervalue that and we just don't realize how important that is. And just like good ethics, people notice when you work hard, it goes a long ways. And like the world's too small. You just realize you run into people again and you work with people again, and it just comes full circle. So I love that you took that away. I love that advice. Charlie, dude, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for sharing your deal with us. I know you have hundreds to be able to choose from. If someone wants to connect with you or kind of follow you, I know you're always doing awesome stuff. On so many different levels, but what's the best place for somebody to be able to do that?
If they're looking at self-storage specifically, my YouTube channel at Twin Oaks Capital, that's the best spot if you want to learn about self-storage. And if they really want to get deep into the weeds, like we get deep into it. Like I don't like to talk about like, really high level stuff. Like we get deep into it. That is also where all the articles I write when I get questions from. So I don't typically take calls direct from people. They can do that. The other way is if they want to simply email me at info@twinoakscap.com. I do office hours 1 to 3 every Friday. I know I'm booked over 3 months out, but if they're willing to wait, I will give them 20 to 30 minutes to talk about anything they want. So that's out there. And then Instagram at Charles C. Gao. Last name actually is Charles C. Kao. Those are the 3 ways to get a hold of me.
Dude, awesome. Yeah, I definitely get on that waiting list. That's worth a 3-month wait for sure. So, dude, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate your friendship. Stoked to kind of keep it going over the future and all the cool things that we have coming in the works. But thanks so much, brother. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one.